The night was colder than I had expected for October. The chill had settled into my bones and I found myself regretting not bringing a heavier jacket. The road stretched before me, long and lonely, illuminated only by the feeble beam of my headlights and the occasional flicker of a distant streetlight. I hadn't seen another car in miles. I was driving back from a work trip, a 3-hour stretch on a highway that cut through miles of dense forest. Normally, I'd avoid driving at night, especially on roads like this, but I was eager to get home. My wife, Amanda, had warned me to stay at a motel, but I laughed it off. "I'll be fine," I had told her. "It's just a straight drive. I'll be home before midnight." But now, with each mile I drove deeper into the night, I wished I had listened. My phone, sitting in the cup holder, had lost its signal long ago. The static-filled radio was my only company, crackling faintly in the background. I tried to focus on the road, but my mind kept wandering back to the stories I'd heard about this stretch of highway. People talked about strange sightings out here, figures in the woods, ghostly hitchhikers, the usual creepy campfire stuff. I never believed any of it. Until tonight. It started with a shadow darting across the road just a few feet ahead. I slammed on the brakes, heart pounding, gripping the wheels so tightly my knuckles whitened. The car skidded to a stop, tires screeching against the asphalt. For a moment, I sat there, breathing heavily, staring at the spot where the shadow had crossed. There was nothing. Just the empty road ahead and the looming darkness of the trees on either side. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly, convincing myself it was probably a deer or some other animal. "Just nerves," I muttered. "You're tired, that's all." The car's engine hummed as I continued down the road, but the uneasiness lingered. Every time my headlights caught the edge of the trees, I half expected to see something staring back at me, something unnatural. That's when I saw her. A woman standing at the side of the road, drenched in the cold glow of my headlights. She wore a long dark coat that fluttered in the breeze, and her hair hung limp around her face, wet with rain I hadn't noticed falling. She raised her arm, slowly, as if she were waving for help. I don't know why, but something deep inside me told me not to stop. Every instinct screamed to keep driving, to speed past and never look back. But I didn't listen. I slowed down and rolled down the window just enough to speak. "Are you okay?" I called out. The woman didn't respond. She took a step closer, her feet dragging across the pavement as if she were exhausted. Something about her movement unnerved me. It was jerky, unnatural, like her body wasn't fully under her control. Against my better judgment, I unlocked the passenger door. "Get in," I said, trying to sound calm. She moved towards the door without a word, her face still obscured by her wet hair. As she climbed into the seat, a strange, cold draft filled the car, making the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I forced a smile, though my hands were shaking as I put the car back in gear. "Where are you headed?" I asked, my voice tight. The woman didn't answer. She just sat there, staring straight ahead, her face still hidden beneath her curtain of hair. I glanced at her from the corner of my eye, but something about her presence filled the car with a heavy, oppressive silence. Minutes passed, the road slipping beneath us, but the air inside the car grew thicker, colder. I found myself shivering despite the heater blasting warm air. My stomach churned with unease, and the overwhelming sense that something was very wrong filled me. "Are you hurt?" I asked, trying again. "Do you need a hospital?" She didn't respond. Her hand, pale and thin, rested on her lap, the fingers twitching slightly. There was something off about her skin, something too pale, almost translucent. I gripped the wheel tighter, my mind racing with excuses to get her out of the car, but none came. The road stretched on, endlessly it seemed, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was no longer driving towards home. I was driving deeper into something far darker. And then she spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper, like the wind rustling through dead leaves. "It's too late." I turned my head sharply towards her, my heart pounding in my chest. "What did you say?" She lifted her head slowly and I finally saw her face. My blood ran cold. Her skin was ashen, her eyes wide and empty, like hollow pits of darkness. Her mouth was twisted into a grotesque smile, her lips cracked and dry. But it was her eyes, those empty, soulless eyes, that sent a jolt of terror through me. "You shouldn't have stopped," she whispered, her voice echoing in the enclosed space of the car, as though it came from everywhere and nowhere all at once. I slammed my foot on the brake, the car screeching to a halt in the middle of the deserted highway. My hands shook as I fumbled with the door handle, desperate to get out, to run, to escape. But when I looked back at the passenger seat, she was gone. The car was empty. I stumbled out of the vehicle, breathing heavily, my heart racing in my chest. The road was silent, the forest around me still and dark. I looked around, but there was no sign of the woman. No footsteps, no shadow. Nothing. My phone buzzed suddenly in my pocket, startling me. I pulled it out with shaking hands. It was a message from Amanda. "Where are you?" it read. I stared at the screen, confused. I typed a quick response. "I'm on my way home. Something weird happened, but I'm okay." Her reply came almost instantly. "You've been gone for 3 days?" The phone slipped from my hand, crashing to the asphalt as a figure appeared in the distance, standing at the edge of the road, waiting. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest, my breath caught in my throat. The figure stood motionless in the dim light of my headlights, far enough away that I couldn't make out the details but close enough to fill me with dread. I wanted to believe it was a trick of the light, but deep down, I knew better. My legs felt heavy, as if the earth itself was pulling me down, but I managed to step forward, drawn towards the figure despite every instinct screaming at me to run. Each step felt like an eternity, the sound of my heartbeat roaring in my ears, drowning out everything else. As I approached, the figure became clearer. It was the woman, the same one who had been in my car just moments ago. She was standing in the middle of the road, facing away from me, her wet hair hanging in limp strands around her pale neck. Her dark coat fluttered in the cold breeze just like before. I stopped a few feet away from her, my throat dry. "What do you want?" I managed to choke out, my voice trembling. Slowly she turned to face me. Her face was the same as before, ashen, hollow, her eyes dark and lifeless. But this time there was something else. She was smiling, her lips curling into that same grotesque grin that sent a chill through my entire body. "You should never have stopped," she whispered again, her voice carrying on the wind, soft but clear, as if she were standing right next to me. I staggered back, tripping over my own feet as I tried to retreat. My hands scrambled to find the car door, but it felt impossibly far away. The world around me seemed to tilt, the ground shifting beneath my feet. Panic clawed at my chest. My phone buzzed again. It was still lying on the ground where I'd dropped it. I hesitated, glancing between the phone and the woman, whose smile widened as though she knew something I didn't. Slowly, I bent down to pick it up, the cold metal of the device comforting against my shaking hands. Another message from Amanda appeared on the screen. 3 days. "Where are you?" My stomach churned. 3 days? No, that wasn't possible. I'd left earlier tonight. I typed a response, my fingers trembling. "What do you mean?" "I'm still driving home." I hit send, my eyes flicking back to the woman. She hadn't moved, but her presence felt more oppressive now, as if the air around her was growing thicker, suffocating. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Amanda's response appeared. "I'm so scared. Please answer the phone." My phone rang. Amanda's name lit up the screen, the vibration sending a shiver through my entire body. I fumbled to answer it, bringing the phone to my ear. "Amanda?" My voice came out as a whisper, barely audible. But it wasn't Amanda's voice that answered. "You're not going home," the voice said. It was a low, guttural rasp, distorted and chilling, like something was speaking through layers of static and malice. I dropped the phone, stepping back in horror. The woman began to walk toward me, her movements slow and deliberate, her feet barely touching the ground as if she were floating just above the surface. My head spun, and a wave of nausea swept over me. I turned and ran toward the car. The driver's door was open, the interior bathed in the pale light of the dashboard. I jumped in, slamming the door behind me, and frantically jammed the keys into the ignition. The engine roared to life, but as I shifted into gear, the woman appeared in front of the car, her smile wider, more twisted, as if her face was stretching unnaturally. "No?" I screamed, slamming my foot on the accelerator. The car lurched forward, but the tires screeched as though stuck in place, spinning uselessly against the pavement. I floored the gas pedal, but the car wouldn't move. She was still there, standing in front of me, her empty eyes locking onto mine through the windshield. Suddenly the entire car went dark. The engine died, the headlights flickered out, and the dashboard lights blinked off, plunging me into complete darkness. I gripped the steering wheel, my breaths coming in ragged gasps, trying to steady myself. Then there was a tap on the window. I didn't want to look. Every fiber of my being told me to keep my eyes forward, to pretend she wasn't there, but I couldn't help it. My head turned slowly, my eyes following, and there, just outside the window, her face was pressed against the glass, her smile impossibly wide, her eyes now a solid black. "Let me in," she whispered, her voice slithering through the cracks in the door. I screamed, my hands fumbling for the lock, trying to make sure the door was sealed tight. But as I glanced down, I saw that it was already unlocked. Oh, I had locked it when I got in. Suddenly, the door swung open, and cold air rushed into the car, wrapping around me like icy tendrils. The woman stood there, her body now impossibly close, towering over me as she leaned down into the car, her smile never faltering. "You can't escape," she whispered. I scrambled out of the passenger side, stumbling into the road, my head spinning as I tried to make sense of the nightmare unraveling around me. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears, my vision blurring as panic surged through me. I turned back to the car, but it was gone. The entire vehicle had vanished, leaving nothing but the empty road behind me. And then, out of the darkness, I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate, echoing in the still night air. I turned toward the sound, my chest tightening in fear. The woman was walking toward me, her figure now distorted, shifting unnaturally in the shadows. Her eyes gleamed with malevolent intent. In that moment, I realized there was no getting away. I was already hers. The last thing I remember was her cold hand reaching out, her fingers brushing against my skin, before the world went completely dark. If you enjoyed the story, kindly subscribe, like and hit notification bell to get notified when I post a new video.